Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads in life, unsure of which direction to take? Perhaps you face challenges in relationships, work, or your spiritual journey, and no matter how hard you try, the answers seem just out of reach. Imagine being handed a guide, a treasure trove of wisdom that could help you navigate through these very struggles with clarity and purpose. What if that guide had been passed down through generations, its wisdom timeless and profound? That's exactly what the book of Proverbs offers to those who are willing to listen and learn. In this introduction to Proverbs, we embark on a journey not only through ancient texts, but also through the timeless truths that can shape our lives today. Proverbs might seem like a collection of simple maxims or wise sayings, but don't be fooled. Beneath its surface lies a deep well of spiritual insight and life-transforming knowledge. The origins of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is part of the wisdom literature in the Bible, written to offer practical and spiritual guidance on how to live wisely. But what makes this book particularly fascinating is its rich history and the powerful individuals who contributed to its creation. At the heart of Proverbs is the figure of King Solomon, a man renowned not just for his wealth and power, but for his remarkable wisdom. King Solomon, the son of David, ascended to the throne of Israel at a young age. His reign was marked by prosperity, peace, and a flourishing of knowledge and culture. But perhaps the most defining moment of Solomon's life occurred when God appeared to him in a dream and offered him anything his heart desired. Solomon, with incredible humility, chose wisdom over wealth, fame, or power. God, pleased with his request, granted him wisdom that surpassed that of any other ruler, making Solomon the wisest man who ever lived. It was through this wisdom that Solomon began to gather Proverbs, short, wise sayings that captured essential truths about life, relationships, and morality. These proverbs were shared and preserved, eventually becoming a part of the biblical canon. The result is a collection of sayings, observations, and teachings designed to guide the reader toward living a life of righteousness and understanding. To fully appreciate Proverbs, we must understand its cultural backdrop. Ancient Israel, much like the world we live in today, faced a variety of challenges. People dealt with issues such as personal integrity, family dynamics, leadership, justice, and faithfulness, all of which are covered in Proverbs. But in Israel, the unique aspect was the intertwining of wisdom and faith. For the Israelites, wisdom was not just a matter of intellect or practicality. It was deeply connected to their relationship with God. In this sense, Proverbs wasn't just a manual for success or a series of life hacks. It was a guide on how to live in accordance with God's will, how to align one's heart with divine principles, and how to lead a life marked by integrity and holiness. The advice found in Proverbs was not just for the ruler or the scholar. It was for everyone, from the youngest child to the wisest elder. This is part of the beauty of Proverbs. It speaks to the universal human condition, offering wisdom that transcends time and culture. Proverbs today. Ancient wisdom for modern life. You might wonder, what does an ancient book like Proverbs have to do with your life today? In a world that is rapidly changing with technological advances and new societal pressures, how can ancient wisdom be of any real help? The answer lies in the fact that human nature doesn't change. The foundations of wisdom, the fear of the Lord. Think about it. Every day, people around the world face decisions about how to treat others, how to manage their finances, how to deal with stress, or how to raise their children. The challenges may be framed differently, but at the core, they remain the same. And this is where Proverbs speaks to us today. It addresses the heart of human experience. Whether you're navigating a difficult relationship, making an important decision at work, or wrestling with your own sense of purpose, the wisdom of Proverbs is still incredibly relevant. But where does this wisdom begin? What is the foundation that holds everything else up? Proverbs 1:7 provides a clear starting point. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. On the surface, this statement might seem straightforward, but as we begin to unpack it, we find that it's far from simple. The phrase, fear of the Lord, often raises more questions than answers. For many, the word fear brings to mind images of terror, dread, or anxiety. After all, the Bible describes God as a loving Father, so why would we need to fear Him? And if we don't fully understand this concept, how can we grasp the profound wisdom it promises? This foundational truth is crucial, and yet it's often misunderstood. So, let's explore it deeper. But the fear spoken of here isn't a trembling or paralyzing fear that causes us to shrink away from God in fear of punishment. Instead, it is a reverent awe and awareness of God's holiness, majesty, and authority over all creation. It is this deep reverence and respect for God's greatness and sovereignty that serves as the very foundation of true wisdom. Let's begin by exploring this idea. Why is the fear of the Lord so central to wisdom? And how does this concept apply to our modern lives? We live in a world where fear is often tied to negative experiences. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. We fear those things that we think are beyond our control, those things that seem dangerous or overwhelming. But biblical fear is different. It's not a fear that shrinks us or causes us to run away from God. It's a fear that draws us closer. The fear of the Lord is akin to the reverence a child has for a parent, especially a loving and wise parent. A child doesn't fear the parent because they are afraid of being punished, at least not in a fearful sense. Rather, the child fears and respects the parent because they recognize the parent's wisdom, authority, and love. The child submits to that authority not out of terror, but because they understand that the parent has their best interests at heart. It is this kind of fear, a deep, respectful awe, that Proverbs speaks of. In Proverbs 9:10, we read, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." This verse not only links the fear of the Lord to wisdom, but also ties it directly to knowledge. A knowing that comes not through intellect alone, but through a relationship with God. As we grow in our understanding of who God is, we come to realize that His wisdom and guidance are essential to our lives. The more we know God, the deeper our reverence for Him becomes. The fear of the Lord doesn't just exist as an abstract idea or lofty concept. It's a practical force in our lives. Consider a moment when you faced a major life decision, maybe a crossroads where you could choose between what is morally right and what is easy or popular. It's in these moments of decision that the fear of the Lord becomes a guiding force. Imagine a professional faced with a choice to take an unethical business deal, one that promises financial gain but requires cutting corners or misleading others. Without the fear of the Lord, the decision might be made on the basis of personal gain, convenience, or short-term success. But with the fear of the Lord, the decision becomes a matter of honoring God with integrity and truthfulness. The fear of the Lord reminds us that God sees all things, and we are accountable to Him for every choice we make. Proverbs 3:5-6 offers a powerful promise. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." This doesn't mean that we should abandon our intellect or understanding. It means that we should submit our understanding to God's wisdom. In the moments where we are unsure, where we are tempted to lean on our own limited perspective, the fear of the Lord redirects our thoughts back to His perfect wisdom and guidance. Wisdom, when disconnected from God, can become distorted and self-serving. Many people in the world have knowledge, experience, and wisdom that doesn't necessarily align with God's will. But wisdom that is founded on the fear of the Lord is holy wisdom. It directs our hearts toward righteousness and truth, not self-interest. Jesus himself warned of this danger in Matthew 7:24-27, where he likened the wise person to one who builds their house on a rock, a firm, unshakable foundation. Wisdom without the fear of the Lord is like building a house on sand. It may stand for a time, but eventually it will falter when tested by the storms of life. Proverbs 14:12 says, "There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death." Without a foundation in the fear of the Lord, even our best attempts at wisdom can ultimately lead us astray. At this point, you might be asking, what's the real power of the fear of the Lord? It's not just that it leads to wisdom. The deeper truth is that this fear allows us to align ourselves with the very heart of God. It's a recognition that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good, and that we, as His creations, are called to live in harmony with His perfect will. As we continue our journey through Proverbs, it's important to remember that the fear of the Lord isn't a one-time decision. It's something we cultivate over time, a posture of humility and gratitude that becomes the lens through which we view the world. The more we grow in the fear of the Lord, the more wisdom we gain. And the more wisdom we gain, the more we reflect God's glory in our lives. The fear of the Lord is the starting point of true wisdom. And as we explore the rest of Proverbs, we will see how this foundational fear opens the door to a deeper understanding of righteousness, justice, and integrity, principles that will continue to shape our lives in profound ways. In a world that constantly seeks shortcuts, the idea of discipline and instruction often feels outdated. Today, we live in an age that prizes instant gratification, where the idea of sitting down and learning something step by step, struggling through failures, and committing to a long-term process is seen as inconvenient, perhaps even counterproductive. Yet, in the book of Proverbs, one of the most recurring themes is the value of discipline. It's a message that is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Without discipline, true wisdom cannot grow. But in a society that views discipline as punishment or something to be avoided at all costs, how can we begin to truly understand its profound importance? Discipline, as portrayed in the Proverbs, is not about punishment or a harsh regimen that strips the individual of freedom. Rather, it is about molding and shaping, guiding an individual toward a deeper understanding of themselves, the world around them, and most importantly, their relationship with God. Through discipline, wisdom is cultivated. The Proverbs tell us that discipline leads to a life of righteousness, where moral clarity replaces confusion, peace replaces anxiety, and joy replaces sorrow. Before diving deep into the value of discipline, let us first understand that it is not an isolated concept in Proverbs. It is tied intrinsically to the development of a wise, righteous, and morally grounded life. In fact, the entire book of Proverbs is essentially a guidebook of instruction for those who seek wisdom and righteousness. In Proverbs 1:2-4, we read, "For gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair." From the very beginning, wisdom is associated with the ability to listen and learn, two critical components of discipline. Learning requires humility, and for most, humility can only be achieved when we experience and accept the correction that discipline offers. The instruction presented in Proverbs is not limited to intellectual learning. It's moral and spiritual training that affects our entire character. It's about developing a lifestyle of learning in every moment of life. Proverbs 4:13 encourages, "Hold on to instruction. Do not let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life." These words underline a profound truth. Wisdom and instruction, much like discipline itself, are not something that should be taken lightly. They are the building blocks of a wise life. We are not merely receiving knowledge for knowledge's sake, but gathering tools for living a life that reflects God's righteousness and wisdom. For many, the word discipline often conjures images of painful consequences or restrictions, something to be avoided at all costs. But in Proverbs, discipline is far from something merely to be endured. It is embraced as an essential process for growth. The misconception that discipline is about punishment needs to be laid to rest. The truth is, discipline is the loving guidance of a parent or teacher guiding a child or student toward maturity. Proverbs 3:11-12 sheds light on this when it says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father, the son he delights in." We see that God's discipline is not about anger or retribution. It is a reflection of his love and his desire for his children to grow. Similarly, earthly parents who truly love their children discipline them with a purpose, not to inflict harm, but to ensure that the child grows into a responsible, thoughtful adult. The pain of discipline is part of the process, but it is temporary and ultimately for good. To grasp this fully, we must view discipline as the tool that God uses to mold us, just as a sculptor uses a chisel to shape a block of stone. It may feel uncomfortable at times, but the final result is a masterpiece. Proverbs 12:1 says, "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid." This verse may seem blunt, but it illustrates a key point. Discipline is intimately tied to growth in wisdom and understanding. Those who receive correction and learn from it are growing in wisdom, while those who avoid or resent discipline are stagnant. As painful as it can be, correction is a sign of love and an indication that God is at work in our lives, shaping us into the people he wants us to be. As we explore discipline in Proverbs, it's clear that the ultimate goal is not simply to modify external behavior. The goal is to transform the heart. Discipline, when truly embraced, leads to inner peace and personal transformation. It is not just about obeying external rules, but about aligning one's heart with God's wisdom. This inner transformation is a process. It begins with small lessons and steps, learning to control one's temper, choosing honesty in situations where it's easier to lie, giving up bad habits, embracing good practices. But as each lesson builds upon the last, something remarkable happens. The person being disciplined begins to change from the inside out. The small choices lead to lasting transformations, and the person begins to embody the wisdom that they once sought. Consider the change in someone's life who has embraced discipline in their spending habits. They may start with a simple act of budgeting and saving, learning to say no to impulsive purchases. Over time, their financial situation becomes steadier, and they experience peace where once there was anxiety. This financial wisdom, born of discipline, begins to shape other areas of their life, like their work ethic, their relationships, and their character. This is the kind of inner transformation that Proverbs promises. It is holistic. It affects not just what we do, but who we are. Proverbs 4:23 captures this idea well. "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." When we embrace discipline, we are guarding our hearts, preventing negative influences and behaviors from taking root and allowing wisdom to flourish instead. True wisdom, then, isn't just about external behavior. It's about internal change that flows out into every area of life. As we continue our journey into the heart of Proverbs, we encounter two distinct paths, one that leads to life, peace, and fulfillment, and another that spirals into destruction, chaos, and regret. These paths are not merely abstract concepts, but deeply real choices that each of us faces every day. They are embodied in two figures: wisdom and folly. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at a crossroad. Ahead of you are two roads, one paved with clear signs and well-maintained trails, leading toward a bright horizon, while the other is dimly lit, overgrown with thorns and obstacles. You don't know exactly where each will lead, but you sense that one promises safety, peace, and growth, while the other seems to whisper an allure of excitement, freedom, and immediate gratification. Which path will you take? This is the very essence of the decision we face every day, the decision between wisdom and folly. At first glance, folly may seem like the easier path. It's seductive, drawing you in with the promise of immediate rewards. Picture this: tempted to make a decision that feels right in the moment, to indulge in a desire that promises satisfaction now, regardless of the consequences. You've seen others take the same route, and they seem to get by, perhaps even thriving in the short term. It feels like the path of freedom, the road where you don't have to worry about restrictions, rules, or consequences. This is the allure of folly. She calls out with a voice full of promises, wrapped in the guise of liberty. Proverbs 9:13-17 introduces her to us. The woman folly is loud. She is undisciplined and without knowledge. She sits at the door of her house, on a seat at the highest point of the city, calling out to those who pass by, who go straight on their way. Let all who are simple come to my house. To those who have no sense, she says, stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious. She's loud, undisciplined, and free of constraint. Attractive qualities to anyone seeking escape from the pressure of life. Folly's voice is full of promise, convincing the weary traveler that freedom from wisdom is liberation. Who doesn't want a life without rules, without limits? It seems to offer everything: a break from responsibility, indulgence without accountability, and the thrill of the moment. But what folly fails to tell you is what's hidden just around the corner, the consequences that await those who follow her lead. The immediate gratification of indulgence is fleeting, but the damage it causes can last a lifetime. At first, everything feels easy. The deceptive nature of folly becomes clear over time. You begin to realize that what once felt like freedom now feels like a trap. You made a choice based on instant gratification, but now you face long-term consequences. The road isn't as smooth as it seemed, and the thrill wears off, leaving you with emptiness, confusion, and regret. In Proverbs 5:3-5, we hear the voice of wisdom contrasting the allure of folly. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. Here, the imagery of the adulterous woman is used to describe the destructive nature of folly. At first, the words of folly seem sweet, like honey and oil, easy to accept and tempting. But the end result is far more dangerous, sharp, and destructive than we could have imagined. It is death and destruction. As you walk down the road of folly, you might begin to see these consequences play out in real life. Relationships unravel, opportunities are lost, and peace is replaced with inner turmoil. The cost of folly doesn't just show up in your life's balance sheet, it shows up in your heart. Regret, guilt, shame, and fear begin to take root, threatening to swallow you whole. In the early stages, the consequences of folly may seem small. A lie here, a selfish decision there, nothing too drastic. But Proverbs warns us that these small seeds of folly will grow over time, and the harvest will be bitter. Proverbs 13:20 reminds us, Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. The immediate fallout of foolishness may not be obvious to everyone, but it becomes clear to the one who lives it. The company we keep, the choices we make, the way we handle our emotions, these all shape the direction of our lives. Foolishness begins in the small, everyday choices that we think won't matter. Over time, they lead to profound consequences that affect not only us, but those around us. It's like building a house on sand. At first, it stands tall, looking solid and sturdy. But when the storms come, the sand shifts and the structure crumbles. The companion of fools will suffer harm, not just in the obvious ways, but in the subtle, cumulative effects of a life lived without wisdom. The fallout of folly isn't limited to personal suffering. It spills over into relationships, careers, and even spiritual life. Foolishness doesn't just bring personal harm, it brings harm to the community. Proverbs 14:1 declares, "The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down." But as the tension builds, the path of wisdom slowly reveals itself. Just as folly promised instant pleasures but delivered destruction, wisdom comes with a different promise. The road may not always be easy, but it leads to life, peace, and lasting fulfillment. While folly offers quick thrills, wisdom offers deep, sustainable joy. In Proverbs 3:13-18, wisdom is depicted as more valuable than silver or gold. Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. The rewards of wisdom, unlike the fleeting satisfaction of folly, are eternal. Wisdom's reward is not just temporary pleasure, but a lasting, deep peace that cannot be taken away. Wisdom builds a house that stands firm even through the storms of life. Wisdom leads us to righteous living in a way that reflects God's purpose for us. A reckless tongue is a dangerous force. It's easy to speak without thinking, isn't it? Most of us have experienced the rush of saying something impulsively, only to regret it seconds later. Maybe we've lashed out in anger or vented frustration to someone who didn't deserve it. Or perhaps we've allowed ourselves to speak in a careless manner, letting words spill out before we've truly considered their impact. These moments, though fleeting, can have far-reaching consequences. In Proverbs 12:18, we are confronted with the image of reckless speech. "The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." It's a striking metaphor. Words that come from recklessness, anger, or carelessness are like swords. The idea here is that just as a sword can wound deeply and irreparably, so too can words wound the heart and spirit. The damage done by such words isn't always visible. It isn't like a cut or bruise that fades with time. No, words that pierce the soul leave scars that can last a lifetime. Think back to your own life. There's likely at least one moment where you can recall the sting of someone's harsh words. Maybe it was an argument where harsh things were said, or a criticism that cut deeper than you expected. The effect was immediate, wasn't it? The feeling of being attacked, belittled, or dismissed, like a sword had just been plunged into your confidence and self-worth. Those wounds might not have been visible, but they hurt just the same. We see this idea again in Proverbs 18:21. "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." This verse brings to light the grave reality that our words carry immense power. They have the potential to bring life, to encourage, to uplift, to heal, or to bring death, to tear down, to destroy, to discourage. Just as an apple tree produces fruit, so too do our words produce fruit. What kind of fruit do we want to cultivate in our relationships? Do we want words that bring peace and understanding, or do we want to sow seeds of anger, bitterness, and division? Let's consider a scenario. Imagine a workplace where colleagues are constantly speaking critically about one another. The words may be masked under the guise of constructive criticism, but over time, they erode trust and morale. People become defensive, relationships sour, and the once thriving environment begins to deteriorate. This is the power of reckless words at work. But what if, in the same situation, there were people who chose to speak with grace? What if colleagues took a moment to encourage one another, even when the work was tough, or when mistakes were made? What if they spoke with the intention of building each other up, rather than tearing each other down? The atmosphere would shift. The words that were once sharp like swords would now be like salves, healing the wounds caused by negativity and criticism. As we turn our attention to the other side of the spectrum, Proverbs unveils the truth that words can be a force for good. Just as reckless speech has the power to destroy, wise speech has the power to build and heal. It's a truth that many of us have likely experienced in our own lives. A word of encouragement, a compliment, or a piece of thoughtful advice has the ability to turn our day around, reshape our outlook, or even change the course of our lives. Proverbs 15:23 speaks directly to this idea. A person finds joy in giving an apt reply, and how good is a timely word. Think about a time when someone's words brought light into your life. Maybe it was a friend who gave you just the encouragement you needed to keep going, or a family member who shared a piece of wisdom at the right moment. The right words at the right time have the power to lift us from despair and lead us toward hope. Now consider this. If our words have the ability to heal, why do we sometimes allow them to harm? If speech is such a powerful tool, why do we sometimes use it carelessly, allowing frustration, anger, or selfishness to dictate what comes out of our mouths? Proverbs calls us to recognize the deep responsibility we have when it comes to our words. We are not simply passive vessels for communication. We are active participants in the shaping of our reality and the realities of those around us. Wise speech is not just about choosing pleasant words. It's about aligning our speech with a higher purpose. Proverbs 16:24 reminds us that gracious words are like honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Gracious words, words that are thoughtful, kind, and intentional, nourish the heart and soul, just as honey nourishes the body. When we speak with grace, we offer healing. When we speak with wisdom, we provide nourishment that sustains others, both in body and spirit. Before we explore the full depth of the transformative power of speech, let's take a moment to consider the role of listening. In many ways, listening is the precursor to wise speech. Proverbs 18:13 gives us this warning: to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. Listening is the first step in choosing our words wisely. To speak wisely, we must first take the time to understand the situation, to listen with empathy, and to comprehend the heart of the matter. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to speak before we think, to react impulsively, and to speak over others. But true wisdom teaches us to pause, to listen deeply, and then to speak words that reflect understanding and compassion. Think of a time when you were speaking with someone, and instead of jumping in with your own thoughts, they truly listened to you. How did it feel? The simple act of listening with intent can open doors to deeper conversations and more meaningful relationships. It allows us to speak from a place of understanding, rather than reacting out of our own emotions or assumptions. As we continue to unfold the teaching on speech in Proverbs, we come to an undeniable truth. The words we speak have consequences that echo through time. Whether we speak life or death, those words will not only shape our relationships in the present, but will continue to reverberate throughout our lives. Every word is a seed, one that, when planted, has the potential to grow into something far larger than we might expect. In Proverbs 4:23, we are reminded, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." The words we speak are not merely random or inconsequential. They flow from the depths of our hearts. The wisdom of Proverbs calls us to be intentional about guarding our hearts, for the state of our hearts directly impacts the nature of our speech. When our hearts are aligned with wisdom, our words will naturally follow, bringing life and healing to others. Trust in God, the key to true success. In every corner of society, we are taught to chase success. From childhood, we are encouraged to strive for achievements, good grades, recognition, wealth, status. Success in many ways has become synonymous with security, happiness, and fulfillment. But how often do we find that despite achieving these things, we still feel unfulfilled? How many people have reached the pinnacle of their careers only to feel a sense of emptiness, wondering if there's something more to life? Many people seek success in their own strength, believing that their hard work, determination, and ambition will bring them the life they've always dreamed of. They trust in their abilities, in their plans, and in their strategies. They hustle, work relentlessly, and pursue their goals with everything they have. Yet time and again, we see the same pattern unfold. The more they achieve, the more they realize that something is missing. The satisfaction is fleeting. The sense of fulfillment is temporary. The journey towards success becomes a cycle of disappointment, leaving them yearning for more. Is this all there is to success? Is it possible that the world's definition of success, the accumulation of wealth, power, and status, is not the true measure of a fulfilling life? Proverbs offers a strikingly different perspective. It calls us to redefine success, to challenge the worldly view of what it means to live a prosperous life. True success, Proverbs reveals, doesn't come from human strength or effort alone. It comes from trusting in God. In our fast-paced, success-driven world, it's easy to become enamored with the idea of self-sufficiency. The message is everywhere. You can do it if you try hard enough. Work hard, and the world will open up for you. Or, the more you achieve, the more satisfied you'll be. These mantras are woven into the fabric of modern society, and most people buy into them wholeheartedly. We pour ourselves into our work, chasing after promotions, financial stability, and the approval of others. But Proverbs gently warns against placing all our trust in our own understanding and abilities. It points out the limitations of human wisdom and self-reliance. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." This simple yet profound passage flips the narrative. Instead of relying solely on our own strength to achieve success, we are called to trust God completely, surrendering our understanding and submitting our plans to him. The promise here is clear. When we trust in God, he will guide us and direct our paths. This isn't about abandoning effort or responsibility, but recognizing that true success comes not from our human plans, but from aligning with God's will. This, however, is a hard pill to swallow in a world that glorifies self-made success. The prevailing message is that if you don't rely on yourself, you're weak or incapable. But Proverbs asks us to look deeper. What happens when we pursue success on our own terms without considering God's guidance? The answer isn't pretty. We might achieve temporary victories, but these victories often come at a cost. Stress, burnout, anxiety, and a sense of emptiness that can't be filled with anything material. Many of us feel like we are in control of our lives, like our success is entirely dependent on the choices we make. And there's truth to this. Our decisions do matter, but Proverbs points to something deeper. Proverbs 16:9 acknowledges this human limitation. In their hearts, Humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. This verse encapsulates the truth that we can make all the plans we want, but ultimately, it's God who directs the outcome. Our best efforts, if not guided by God, can be in vain. It's not that planning is wrong. On the contrary, Proverbs urges us to be diligent and wise. However, it teaches that our plans must be held loosely, with a recognition that the ultimate success of our endeavors lies in God's hands. The more we cling to the illusion of control, the more we are bound to experience frustration. No matter how much we plan, life will always have its uncertainties, and our attempts to control everything will often leave us feeling helpless. Trusting in God, on the other hand, frees us from the anxiety of trying to control the uncontrollable. It shifts the burden from our shoulders to God's, knowing that He is the one who holds the future in His hands. The path to true success, Proverbs teaches, begins with humility, a quality that runs contrary to the self-reliance celebrated in modern culture. Humility is not about weakness or lack of ambition. Rather, it's about recognizing our dependence on God. It's about acknowledging that no matter how hard we work or how clever our plans, we are ultimately powerless without God's guidance. Proverbs 22:4 states, "The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life." This verse invites us to consider the deeper rewards of humility. True success is not about status, wealth, or recognition, but about the riches that come from a life aligned with God's will, peace, joy, fulfillment, and spiritual prosperity. Humility, when paired with a healthy reverence for God, leads to lasting success in every area of life. It's the opposite of the world's version of success, which often requires pride, competition, and self-promotion. In God's economy, success is not about striving for power or position. It's about surrendering our desires to Him and trusting that His plans are greater than ours. But this idea runs counter to the world's expectations. Our society tells us that success comes from asserting ourselves, from working harder than anyone else, and from standing out from the crowd. Proverbs, however, invites us into a more peaceful and fulfilling vision of success, one that is grounded in humility, trust in God, and submission to His will. The wisdom of relationships, friendships, marriage, and family. Human beings are not made to live in isolation. We are inherently relational creatures, designed by God to interact, connect, and build meaningful bonds with others. From the beginning of creation, God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone." Genesis 2:18. Whether it's the relationship between friends, the union of a husband and wife, or the dynamics within a family, relationships are a vital part of the human experience. And in the book of Proverbs, we find timeless wisdom that speaks directly to how we should approach these relationships. In today's world, relationships are often viewed as a means to an end, sources of happiness, social status, or security. But Proverbs offers a deeper, more transformative perspective. It reveals that relationships are not just about getting our needs met, but about reflecting God's wisdom, love, and design in every interaction. Whether it's in our friendships, our marriages, or our family lives, the wisdom found in Proverbs provides a blueprint for building relationships that honor God, foster peace, and lead to true fulfillment. In the fast-paced world we live in, it's easy to form relationships based on convenience, shared interests, or proximity. We may surround ourselves with people who make us feel good in the moment, without considering the long-term impact of these relationships. But Proverbs teaches that the friends we choose can have a profound influence on the direction of our lives. Our friendships shape our values, our decisions, and ultimately, our character. In friendships, wisdom is found in mutual encouragement, accountability, and support. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. True friendships are not just about shared fun or comfort. They are about mutual growth and support. A wise friend does not simply agree with everything we say or do. Instead, they challenge us to become better, to think more deeply, and to act in ways that honor God. These kinds of relationships are not always easy, but they are the ones that bring lasting value into our lives. But what happens when we form friendships based solely on convenience or common interests, without considering whether the other person shares our values? Proverbs warns that such relationships can lead us astray. Proverbs 22:24-25 offers this counsel: do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. This wisdom is not about avoiding people who may have flaws, but rather about avoiding relationships that could encourage us to behave in ways that are counterproductive or harmful. The wrong friendships can lead us into destructive patterns of behavior, whether it's gossip, anger, or indulgence. The wise friend, on the other hand, helps to steer us toward greater wisdom and godliness. A wise marriage is one that is rooted in mutual respect, love, and a shared commitment to God. Proverbs paints a vivid picture of what a marriage founded on wisdom looks like, and it speaks to both husbands and wives, offering guidance that will strengthen and deepen the marital relationship. One of the key teachings on marriage in Proverbs is found in Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. Marriage, in this sense, is a gift from God, a blessing that enriches the lives of those who enter into it with wisdom. A good marriage, where both partners seek to honor God and serve one another, is a source of joy and peace. The favor of the Lord rests upon such a union because it is built on His principles of love, respect, and selflessness. However, Proverbs also acknowledges the challenges and difficulties that come with marriage. Proverbs 21:9 reminds us, better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. This passage highlights the importance of peace within the home. Marriage is not without its challenges, and relationships can often be strained by conflict, misunderstandings, or selfishness. Proverbs teaches that the wise spouse, whether husband or wife, will be slow to anger, patient, and willing to work toward reconciliation. The key to a healthy marriage is not the absence of conflict, but the commitment to resolve it with wisdom, humility, and love. Proverbs also offers insight into the importance of mutual respect and trust in marriage. Proverbs 31:11 speaks to the husband's role in honoring and trusting his wife. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. The ideal marriage is one of mutual trust and respect. In this kind of relationship, both partners build each other up, support each other's strengths, and work together to overcome challenges. Wisdom in marriage requires vulnerability, humility, and a shared commitment to God's purpose for the relationship. Family life is another area where Proverbs offers profound wisdom. As parents, we are called to raise our children in a way that honors God and equips them for a life of righteousness. Proverbs provides practical guidance on how to raise children with wisdom, discipline, and love, all of which will help them grow into responsible, God-fearing adults. Proverbs 22:6 teaches, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it." This verse emphasizes the importance of laying a solid foundation for children, not just through words, but through actions that model godly principles. It speaks to the role of parents in guiding their children with wisdom, showing them the right path, and instilling in them a respect for God's ways. Parenting, according to Proverbs, is not just about teaching rules, but about creating an environment where wisdom is modeled and lived out. But Proverbs also acknowledges that the influence of parents is not the only factor in a child's life. Proverbs 29:15 reminds us, "The rod of correction imparts wisdom, but the child left undisciplined disgraces its mother." Discipline, when applied with love and care, is an essential part of parenting. Wisdom in parenting involves setting boundaries, correcting wrong behavior, and guiding children in the ways of righteousness. It's not about harsh punishment, but about guiding children toward understanding and growth. Furthermore, Proverbs also speaks to the broader context of family life, how harmony, peace, and mutual respect among all family members contribute to a healthy and successful family dynamic. Proverbs 15:17 highlights, "Better a small serving of vegetables with love than a fattened calf with hatred." This verse emphasizes that relationships within the home are more important than material wealth or external appearances. What truly matters in a family is love, respect, and unity. True family success, Proverbs teaches, is not about the things we possess, but the love we share. Living Proverbs in our daily lives. As we come to the end of this exploration of the book of Proverbs, it's essential to pause for a moment and reflect on the journey we've taken. We've traveled through ancient wisdom, uncovering truths that transcend time and culture, principles that are just as vital today as they were centuries ago. The teachings of Proverbs are not just theoretical concepts or ancient wisdom reserved for theologians or scholars. They are practical guidelines for daily living. They provide a roadmap for navigating the complexities of life in a way that brings us closer to God and to a life of fulfillment, peace, and purpose. Let's revisit the core teachings we've uncovered, step by step, to remind ourselves of the wisdom Proverbs has to offer. We began by discussing the fear of the Lord as the foundation of all wisdom. This foundational principle teaches us that true wisdom begins with reverence for God, understanding that He is the ultimate source of all knowledge, guidance, and life. We learn that the fear of the Lord is not about fear in the way we might think, but rather about deep respect and awe for God's power, holiness, and sovereignty. Then we move to the value of discipline and instruction, exploring how embracing discipline isn't about punishment, but about growth. Discipline, in the context of Proverbs, is a tool that helps shape our lives in alignment with God's will, molding our character and habits. As we learned, it's through disciplined actions that we see personal and spiritual growth. Without discipline, we would wander aimlessly, but with it, we gain clarity and direction. Next, we explored wisdom versus folly, two pathways that could not be more distinct. Wisdom leads to life, peace, and stability, while folly leads to destruction, conflict, and suffering. This stark contrast teaches us that every decision we make either aligns with wisdom or folly, and the consequences of those choices are profound. Through the lens of Proverbs, we are reminded that our daily choices matter. They shape not only our immediate future, but also our eternal destiny. We then explored the power of speech and how our words can either build up or tear down. Proverbs reminds us that our words hold incredible power. Whether it's a compliment, a critique, or a simple word of encouragement, the impact of our speech can resonate far beyond the moment. The words we speak shape relationships, influence environments, and leave a legacy. Proverbs teaches us to speak wisely, to choose words that bring life and healing, not destruction and division. Another key lesson we explored was the importance of trusting in God. In a world where success is often defined by self-reliance, Proverbs encourages us to trust God above all else. True success doesn't come from striving on our own, but from surrendering our plans to God, seeking His wisdom, and relying on His provision. Proverbs calls us to abandon the pursuit of self-made success and to lean into the knowledge that God's ways are higher than our own. We also examine the wisdom of relationships, learning that our friendships, marriages, and family dynamics are profoundly influenced by the wisdom we apply in them. Proverbs speaks directly to the importance of wise counsel, good friendships, and healthy communication within marriages and families. Whether it's handling conflict, offering support, or nurturing intimacy, Proverbs teaches that relationships thrive when we honor God's wisdom. Each of these themes represents a pillar of wisdom that can shape and direct our lives in profound ways. However, understanding these principles is only the first step. Applying them to our daily lives is where the true transformation occurs. The wisdom of Proverbs is not just for reading, it is for living. Now that we've explored these lessons, it's time to put them into practice. Don't wait until everything in your life feels perfect. Start applying these principles today. Begin by choosing one area of your life, whether it's your words, your relationships, or your trust in God, and take a small step towards living according to the wisdom of Proverbs. Ask yourself, how can I make decisions today that reflect wisdom rather than folly? How can I trust God more fully in my career, my relationships, and my daily tasks? How can I choose discipline in the areas where I've been slacking? Start with one step. Maybe it's as simple as choosing to speak words of encouragement today instead of criticism. Or maybe it's taking a moment to pray and ask God for wisdom in a decision you're facing. Whatever it is, remember that Proverbs doesn't just offer advice. It offers a way of life that, when followed, leads to peace, fulfillment, and success. Let today be the beginning of a new chapter in your life, one where you choose to live according to the timeless wisdom of Proverbs. Apply its truths to your challenges and watch as they begin to transform your life.